And so you know who loves the conversation about the purge in the Republican Party, about getting rid of Liz Cheney and others? Hopefully Mitt Romney too. Talk about a country club Republican. And that would be Chuck Todd at NBC News. So Chuck Todd, we should up Chuck Todd. That's what we should call him. Chuck Todd likes the party purge because he feels like in 2022, as 2022 elections approach, Chuck Todd is hopeful that the Republican Party will be in an all-out war. And if it is in an all-out war, then what will happen? Well, the Republican Party won't pick up as many seats during the midterm elections with a Democrat as president. That's what Chuck Todd wants. Up Chuck Todd wants. Maybe I should just call him that. So nonetheless, we have Chuck Todd. He's obsessed with Donald Trump because that really helps NBC's ratings. And he hopes that it also hurts the Republican Party. That's his goal. But he also loves Liz Cheney. He loves Liz Cheney. He also loves Mitt Romney. Chuck Todd loves them. He also loves Governor Larry Hogan. We're going to touch on that in a minute as to why he loves these individuals so much. So nonetheless, we have Chuck Todd, and with his obsession with Donald Trump and Liz Cheney, he asks the question in the recent good old Chuck Todd interview. And we have that clip, and here it is.
Elise Stefanik, she voted against President Trump's tax bill, right? Forget the other stuff. Everybody else has made these points that, on all the different ways that she has not been what Danny said. What is Trumpism? Because if it's defined by these issues, she doesn't fit the bill unless, if you believe the election lie, then she does.
And that's why it's striking to hear some of these House Republican leaders talk about how they want somebody who is going to carry on what is sort of the message of the Republican Party, which is the message of Trumpism. If you're looking for somebody who's going to do that on policy, it's actually Liz Cheney who scores better on that front than somebody like Elise Stefanik or like Elise Stefanik.
So do you hear that? That's NBC News saying they really want Liz Cheney to keep the position. They don't want Elise Stefanik to get the position. They want to keep Liz Cheney. Now, when NBC News says that, you know that the individual, Liz Cheney, is someone who is completely compromised when NBC News and the entire liberal news media like you. And that is the problem, ladies and gentlemen. We have so many phony Republicans. They are elected, and they say they are conservatives. Remember where Liz Cheney is from. She's from Wyoming. Wyoming is an incredibly conservative state. And so you would expect Liz Cheney to vote that way and to comport herself so that she grows the conservative movement nationwide. And you would also hope that she would recognize the realignment in the Republican Party from the country club types to the blue-collar workers who are increasingly becoming Republicans because the Democrats aren't interested in them whatsoever. But Chuck Todd and NBC News, they love Liz Cheney. They want to keep her in there. They also want to keep Mitt Romney in office. And they also want to keep Larry Hogan in office. And what's interesting is Donald Trump, and this is very clear, Donald Trump wants revenge against these individuals because of their attack on him. And Trump, and let's face it, he has plenty of downsides, not the least of which is the inability to many times properly articulate his points. But it is true that Donald Trump has accelerated the realignment in the Republican Party so that more blue-collar workers come into it. There's no doubt that he has done that. And he's done that because he has railed against China and he's railed against NAFTA. And he's talking about and always talked about bringing jobs back home. To me, that's really not controversial. But at NBC News, they want the club to stay together. They want Mitt Romney and Liz Cheney, and they want Larry Hogan to stay with them because, when you're NBC News, you want a Republican Party that's tame, like a pet. You want to keep them like a pet. You don't really want them to be somebody that might bite your hand. Otherwise, you can't have them on NBC News. If you notice, you never have anyone who's really controversial on NBC News that's in the Republican Party because their viewers might actually see an alternative opinion. So, speaking of which, Chuck Todd, of course, believes that Governor Larry Hogan of Maryland is a saint and should be the ambassador of sainthood, I guess. So Larry Hogan was on Meet the Press, and Chuck Todd asks him a question because naturally Chuck Todd wants to engage in more party purging in the Republican Party. He wants to get rid of all the Trump voters. Doesn't want to just get rid of Donald Trump. And that's what people think, by the way. What he really wants to do, Chuck Todd, is he wants to get rid of the Trump voters because they pose the biggest danger to the Democrat Party because it is a growing coalition of everyday people who believe in America. And so here is Chuck Todd asking Governor Larry Hogan of Maryland the question.
Can you explain why the party doesn't seem to hold Donald Trump responsible this? When I say the party, most of the elected leadership, you're an exception at the NGA, RGA apparatus, but most of the leadership doesn't seem to pin this on him. Again, you sort of, the record is the record. Why do you think they don't want to pin it on him?
So, once again, is Chuck Todd obsessed with Donald Trump or what? It never ends. And that's the question that he asks Governor Larry Hogan. Now, for those that don't know or don't remember, Governor Larry Hogan was in a regular tiff with the former president of the United States, President Donald Trump. They regularly argued. Now, of course, from the governor's standpoint, he was arguing because he wants to become the alternative to Donald Trump. He is part of, Governor Larry Hogan is part of the Country Club Republicans. He grew up as a Country Club Republican. He grew up with a silver spoon in his mouth. And those are the people, naturally, that he gravitates towards. He gravitates towards the Bushes. He gravitates towards the Liz Cheneys. He gravitates towards the Mitt Romneys of the world. That is a fact. That is a fact. And so, with the question that was asked by Chuck Todd, you can only imagine what the response is. Well, we've got it. And here's the response.
Well, I think they're concerned about retaliation from the president. They're concerned about, being attacked within the party. And it just bothers me that you have to swear fealty to the dear leader or you get kicked out of the party. It just doesn't make any sense.
So how do you like that? That's Governor Larry Hogan saying that you have to swear fealty to the dear leader, meaning you have to swear fealty to Donald Trump or you get kicked out of the party. Folks, that is not true. That is not true. Larry Hogan duked it out with Donald Trump last year again and again and again. I'll just bring up one example. Larry Hogan duked it out with Donald Trump during the pandemic because Larry Hogan said that Donald Trump couldn't get enough pandemic test kits, COVID test kits, to Maryland. So Hogan, instead of getting the information right, that's what he told all of the news media, including Chuck Todd, by the way. Hogan, whose wife's from South Korea, then decided to get pandemic test kits and COVID test kits, from South Korea. Those test kits were sent to Maryland and they ended up not working because they were incomplete test kits. So the governor of Maryland wasted all of this money, and that started the whole battle between the governor and Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, because the governor made this massive mistake and he wasted all this money. The governor's wife's from South Korea, so that certainly looks very sketchy that they bought these test kits from South Korea that didn't work, by the way. And then here's the governor in this interview with Chuck Todd that you just heard, the governor of Maryland saying, well, if you don't swear fealty to the dear leader, well, the dear leader would be, the leader of North Korea. And isn't it interesting that this governor bought test kits from South Korea and they didn't work? It sounds like he's swearing fealty to South Korea. I mean, look, the fact of the matter is that Governor Larry Hogan wants to run for president. He is part of the Country Club Republicans. Good old Chuck Todd loves the fact that he can exploit the division and schism in the Republican Party, and he wants to widen that division. He wants to widen and further that schism if he can. And so we have Chuck Todd, who has yet another question. And we have his take on Liz Cheney. And we have that clip, and here it is.
Well, to me, the most damning part of this, Liz Cheney voted for President Trump's singular legislative achievement. And what many Republicans tell me is very important to protecting. The person that they're replacing her with voted against it.
So, isn't it funny? NBC, who is talking about the voting record of different Republicans and comparing them and saying, well, this one is more Trumpy, and this one is less Trumpy. So now suddenly they're saying, well, Liz Cheney is more Trumpian and therefore she should stay. I mean, it's really funny. Would you really take your advice in the Republican Party from Chuck Todd at NBC? I don't think you would. I know I wouldn't take it. And so here's Chuck Todd. It's like, how do you speak to Trump voters? And we have that clip, and here it is.
How do you talk to Trump voters? There's certainly some places that President Trump did well in Western Maryland, some places along the Eastern Shore. You're in a blue state, so you have a little bit of an easier time straddling the wings of the party. But how do you have a conversation with a Trump supporter that says, hey, how come you haven't investigated voter fraud, Governor Hogan?
Well, I just try to be honest with them. And, you know, in my state, I ran 45 points ahead of the president, but I'm ahead of him among Republicans, among conservatives, and among Democrats and independents.
That's Governor Hogan. I'm ahead of the former president of the United States among independents, Republicans, and Democrats. Ahead of them? Look, so this is a governor that polls all of the time. And here's the problem when you poll all the time. When you poll all of the time, it means that you fundamentally believe in nothing. You're letting the polls drive what you believe rather than letting your beliefs and your foundational principles drive your policymaking. And if there were ever something that should be put on this governor's history, the history of this governor, it would be, and this governor being Larry Hogan, it would be, here's a guy who just polled about every single issue. And if he found out that it was phenomenally popular, then that's what he did. If he found out that it was controversial, then he didn't touch it with a 10-foot stick. And that's the way this governor has governed. And then he says to Chuck Todd, oh, well, I'm much more popular than Donald Trump is among independents, among Democrats, and among Republicans. I don't think so. Okay, because this governor couldn't even win his own state if he were to run for president of the United States if Donald Trump were in the election. And I'm not sitting here promoting Donald Trump to run for president again. I'm not. I'm just saying that it's really kind of insulting that you have this guy, Larry Hogan, who spent all of 2020 criticizing the president of the United States during a national emergency. And he did so only because Larry Hogan wanted to run against Donald Trump. And now he's on NBC News yet again, attacking Donald Trump, saying, well, Larry Hogan is a country club Republican. You should trust him because, you know, he comes from Maryland royalty and everything will be fine if you just vote for Larry Hogan. And Larry is the guy that is going to be much more acceptable. Here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. If you know anything about the state of Maryland, you will know that the city of Baltimore is a complete and utter disaster. It's a disaster. And the state is a sewer of far left, progressive, out of control, Marxist nonsense that they keep passing in the legislature. And Larry Hogan never speaks up against any of those things because he would much rather let a bill go into law after he polls it, of course, than he would actually really take on the establishment that is running the state into the ground. And everybody knows it. And including, by the way, all of the talking heads, and they're using him. Chuck Todd is using this governor. Now, this governor is also using Chuck Todd because he gets all of this national attention. But the idea that Larry Hogan will advance as a Republican nationwide somehow, it ain't going to happen. And it's not going to happen for any other reason. And he, by the way, in my opinion, he's ruined his opportunity. And it's not going to happen because of Larry Hogan. Because of he hasn't taken on the big issues. He says he wanted to change the state, and he hasn't done that. And that is Chuck Todd is upset at the party purge.